around the world. We are here in Washington, D.C. We are live from the International Council for Museums Committee for Education and Cultural Action Conference in Washington, D.C., which is being held at the National Museum of the American Indian, hosted by the Smithsonian Center for Learning and Digital Access. Pino Monaco is the coordinator for this event. This session is a little bit different than most of the other sessions that have been happening here at the conference. We are so pleased to have both Elena Corradini from Italy as well as Matheus Rocha from Brazil joining us live via the internet. In addition, live from the conference, we have Mario Antas and Richard Lachapelle who will be talking as well. Each presenter will have about 9 minutes to share their presentation, and then afterwards we'll take questions from the audience. You can follow along with hashtag CECA15. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them there. Without further ado, we'd like to start with Mario Antas, who will share a little bit about bridging the gap between formal and non-formal education, the network of archaeology clubs in schools. Mario?
Hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to congratulate CECA for this wonderful opportunity to everybody. With these new technologies, we can share experience around the world without being physical present, all in the same place. It's a beautiful scenario. We are here in DC. So I'm going to make my presentation now. It's called Bridging the Gap Between Non-Formal and Formal Education. This project was considered the best practice in 2012, in the first year of CECA Awards. And I'm presenting now the results for that. Okay? So,
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, you're all set.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. As I told you, this project was considered the Best Practice Award in 2012, the first year of Best Practice, and for me it's a pleasure to present it. So what I'm trying to do now is just to pass. I have some technical issue here.
No worries. I'm going to do the passing,
okay.
So you can just talk. Yep.
Okay, can you pass for the second one, please? Sorry. Okay. Our starting point is to understand how people, in this case, see archaeology. Our starting question is how to communicate archaeology, how to communicate through the archaeological artifacts in the museum. If for the general public and for the schools and for the teachers, archaeology is something like this, like we see in the movies, like Indiana Jones, or more recently Lara Croft in the video games and also in the movies, or even like another movies about Egypt, because Egypt is part of our main past. So this is our main question for us as a National Museum of Archaeology in Lisbon. So we think a lot about that, and we begin with two words. First, turning the museum into something participatory, which means the visitors, or in this case, students and teachers, are allowed to participate in a very active way. And second, switching the social image of archaeology from a big treasure hunt to a scientific field that studies the traces left by the mankind. So in this case, we thought that archaeology as science, the main purpose is to communicate with the public. So we do a lot of research, and we came to another answer, and our answer is to establish a new network, the network of school archaeological clubs. And you can see in the next slide. So, okay, can pass if you don't mind. So just a cartoon for making some some debates. Okay, so okay. The question is, we start from the beginning, which means we give to the kids new resource to understand the true meaning of archaeology and in the construction of the past. So we establish this network of school archaeological clubs. Now I'm going to explain how this does it work and with kinds we can share our experience with schools, not only in Portugal but around the world. You can pass if you want. Okay. Okay. These are the four main questions that I will try to get lunch for the debate. I have so many time, so you can see them. Okay. This is the general conceptual terms. We have museums and one-line platform, and in that one-line platform, we share all the data, all the resources that the museum educators produce, and also the schools, and also the kids and teachers and the educational community as well. So I only give you a few examples. The main purpose is to allow new ways of learning, because everybody is learning. Educators in museums are learning, teachers are learning, and students are learning also. Please, Ashley. Okay, who can participate? All teachers and students, because archaeology is a transversal area, and all students can develop wherever they want, and they talk about heritage, because you consider the archaeology as the most democratic of the heritage, because it's before the rise of nationalism. So I think it's a good platform for a debate as well. So I'm going to show really fast. We have activities in schools and activities, of course, shared in an online platform, as I said before. So activities in museum, a lot of them, like usually educational services do. For instance, didactic exhibitions, workshop, guided visits, experimental archaeology. You can see a picture of a kid experimenting prehistoric archaeology, like the prehistoric men do in caves, or making fire in.
Okay. Just a reminder to our friends in Italy to mute your camera. Elena, if you could mute your camera, please.
Sorry?
Could you mute your camera, please? Okay.
Could you?
Mute, silence. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, another activities that we are developing in the museum is some kind of experimental work that they see how we work in the museum laboratory, and they can touch really artifacts by unknown provenience, because we have a lot of artifacts, and they can feel history in their own hands. So it's a project to feel, to touch, and to know history in their own hands as well. Okay, we also promote a funny exhibition. You can see a table, interactive table, and in that little pictures, the first one is to touch, and the second is to see. So we invert because it's completely different. Persons are invited to touch first, then to see, and then and finally to understand. And in the world we call this activity from stones to songs, from stones to songs, and he ended with the rock concerts based on the artifacts, archaeological artifacts. So a huge success this activity as well. So in schools we promote a lot of activities. I only show you a few of them because we are running out of time, and my colleagues are more important things to say than me. So I only show more pictures about schools. Okay, school visits, they managing to do with the clay, ceramics. So they are touching in history, trying to understand how in the historical times they do in the medieval ages and so on. So it's a very huge chronological timetable that we have in this museum, and the main thing that they can create their own activities in their own schools not only in Portugal, as I mentioned before. So a lot of activities are carrying on because, as we say in short, teachers and students are free to decide what kind of activities they want to develop, because the only limit is imagination. Okay. Of course, there are also another kind of activities, like we see these artifacts, and they make pictures, and they make 3D image and draws. As I told you before, imagination is the only limit for this project, and we are carrying very good since 2012. You can show more. Okay, this is experimental archaeology, and archaeology on the field is very popular as well. And we are working with more than 1,000 students with several schools, about 42 schools, not only in Portugal, that I will show in the map in a few slides, actually, if you don't mind. Okay, more artistic activities, like this one is not, sorry, the image is not so good because it's a comic book activity about the visiting a museum. You can pass. Exhibitions in schools. So there are lots of exhibitions. I will share this PDF with you and answer questions, of course. We have a YouTube channel, and among other things as well. So in the end, we promote also in school temporary exhibitions with the works of the students based on real archaeological artifacts. Is a way to promote archaeology, not only from artifacts from our museum, but archaeology from the places where the schools are located as well. So it's a huge and complex process, as you can see, with a lot of work, and this is our online platform showing the localizations of schools, and some materials like this one. We can download it, you can print it, you can download in PDF. There are teaching materials based in, of course, in Portuguese curriculum, but we can share informations and links for several schools around the world. We have a lot of partnerships, because partnerships allow us to do important things, and I only want to stress two of them. The first one with a major company in Portugal. It's a movie company that a lot of cinema theaters in Portugal, and allow us to bring more 1,000 students to the cinema to see a movie, a comic movie. You can show the image, please, about to be an archaeologist. It's called TED. And we have here a statement of a young girl for the 5th grade with 11 years old that told in the shy way that it was the first time she get to the movie. Okay, this is the real Portugal, the interior Portugal, because Portugal is not only about the cities, it's about the remote village, and for them it was an opportunity, a great opportunity. So we call it this as a social project as well. This is our social main work in this field of museology as well. Okay.
Wonderful. We're about to run out of time,
okay,
so I want to make sure we get to the last few slides.
The last one is about this project, Eurovision EMI Museums Exhibiting Europe. Is a European project which allows persons to see objects through different ways, each connected with this project as well. Only to show the last slides, if you don't mind. Sure. So just to finish, I only want to show you the map, two maps. The other one, no, back, please. Okay, the other one, please. Okay, this project is running out in Portugal and in Brazil as well. We have schools in Brazil working on that, and we have in several former colonies of Portugal, countries, especially in Africa, that speak Portuguese. And nowadays, our new challenge is to get to Portuguese communities around the world, especially in Australia and here in the United States and Canada and around Europe. So this project is becoming popular, and this year it won another prize. It was recognized by NEMO, Network of European Museums Association, as an example of best practice in education. And for us, is very important this distinction because it's our job. And the true merit, the last word is the true merit of this project is not mine, is from the teachers and the students. They have every day work in heritage and produce new things and new materials for everybody. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So if you're watching us, not here in Washington, D.C., feel free to tweet to us at #ICOMCECA15, and we'll be happy to take your questions. We also have several folks here in the live audience, so if you have any questions, please just let me know. Mario, I think it was such a great example of using real-world strategies with students, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about the partnerships with schools that you've been working on and how that works with the online platform as well.
About the schools. Well, schools are free to decide who is going to participate, which students, which grades. Never mind, they have a teacher that coordinates the work with the museum, and we try, of course, to fulfill their own expectations. So teachers decide what subject they want to study. For instance, nowadays, as you may know, there are a big issue about the migrants, and our main mission as National Museum of Archaeology is to tell everybody that Europe is a place of migrants. How many peoples passed from our history, from prehistoric times until the rise of nationalisms in our land. So the history of Europe is a history of migrants. So this is also a social project, and we can debate very important things like the situation of migrants from Syria and other countries in Europe through the archaeology, because the heritage gives us this opportunity. The heritage belongs to everybody. It don't belongs to me or to you, Ashley. It belongs to everybody, and everybody can be is free to feel the heritage their own way.
That's perfect. Wow, wonderful. Does anybody here in the audience have any questions for Mario? If not, we'll also have questions at the end of this session. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Elena. Thank you so much, Mario.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley.
So Elena Corradini is coming to us live from Italy, and Elena will be presenting on the Italian University Museums Network for the Guidance to Scientific Culture. Elena will be presenting for about 9 to 10 minutes, and then we'll also have time for questions for her presentation. Elena?
Okay. We started from the Declaration of Science about the use of scientific knowledge by the UNESCO in 1999. Science and knowledge must be directed to the individual education, to peace, to cultural, social, and environmental development. And as you can see in this slide, the effort to preserve the scientific cultural heritage began almost 30 years ago in Italy, with the creation of a national committee for the protection of the historical scientific heritage. And 15 years ago was created the Conference of the Italian, by the Conference of the Italian University Rector, a museum commission in order to preserve and valorize the scientific cultural heritage. And this commission starts working in synergy with the Central Institute for the Catalogue of the Ministry of the Cultural Heritage to create cataloging standard for the scientific cultural heritage. And In continuity with this, in 2012 was created a network, the first network of the Italian University Museum among 14 university Italian, among 14 Italian university. It means that in all that university we have 47 museums, 12 botanical gardens, and 39 collections. So a big project about a lot of Italian university museum. This project was approved and financed in 2013 and is coordinated by the University of Modena and Reggio Emilia. It means my university. The title is The Computer Technologies and the New Realities for Knowledge, Networking, and Valorization of Scientific Cultural Heritage, the role of the network of the University Museum. The general goal was to standardize the practices and the tools in order to make possible a better communication of the scientific cultural heritage with a network strategy and a common online channel, to realize a web portal of the Italian University Museum. The first step was the cataloging of the scientific cultural heritage into the general catalog of the cultural heritage of the Ministry of the Cultural Activity and Tourism, using the cataloging card of the University Museum collection. The cataloging card, which was created by the first commission of the 1999, and about 30,000 cultural specimens are inserted in this catalog. Here you can see the variety of disciplines of the cataloging University Museum collection. It means botany, physics, zoology, mineralogy, anatomy, and so on. And in 2014, a second project was created. The network was enlarged with more university, 2 more university and 1 more museums, and this project was approved and financed another time in this year by the same ministry. The title is Educational Path of the National University Museum Network for Lifelong Guidance to the Scientific Method and Culture. This is the network for this project, which is the vision of this project. Why did we choose this theme of guidance? By cataloging the first project was giving us a clear dimension of the heritage preserved in the museum of the network. We realized also the relevance of creating a new set of relationships around specimens to make this collection able to produce new interest and tell their long stories. These relationships between places, present and past, person, are able to produce a flux of information that goes from museums to the society and in the opposite direction when the museum is able to learn from external cultural practices. Moreover, the University Museum can have a greater role in this process of dissemination of scientific culture, thanks to the variety of disciplines concerned, as we can see before. This variety gives account of the complexity of the scientific approach. And third point, the University Museum heritage bear witness of the historical developments of scientific researches. Through their collection, it is possible to reconstruct the history of different disciplines. The general goal is to realize a guiding teaching community, helping to guarantee education and guidance, give youth a chance to shape their own future based on scientific way, prevent and oppose wastage and youth malaise, facilitate the acquisition of career management skills, and then to strengthen the network to better integrate instruction and job market. The originality of this project stand in the prospect of integration among the competencies of the various members and an integrated system for lifelong guidance, able to create links, sharings, dialogues, and communication. The specific goals are lifelong guidance paths through the scientific heritage and the innate knowledge of museums according to the repos of the European Lifelong Guidance Policy Network. 3 fundamental parts: to consider the formation and preservation of scientific collection as archives of knowledge built up during the centuries, the practice of simple experimental activities, laboratories and stages with the fascinating context of the museums, And third, the development of a path from back to school through the working out of brief essays, both individual or collective, that meets the requirement of the experimental approach, in particular the rigor of methods, the control and the reproducibility of the experiments, and the distinction between result and inferences. The protagonists are the high school students, particularly those of the last 2 years of the guide, to guide them toward the university and the job market. High school teachers, students, parents and family, and cultural mediator. The activities: creation of guiding paths, laboratories and traineeship for students, cultural mediator trainings, visit to the museums, seminars and roundtable for students, teachers, school medicine and parents, international school work, training courses, and informative meetings. The instruments are the databases and the web portal, the database of the collection. One of the main tools we can use to give the new sense to the lifelong guidance to the scientific method is the portal of the Italian University Museum, a collector of scientific itinerary. The core of the portal is made by different thematic paths, which are conceived to give a contextualization to the collection of the museums. The characteristics are the usability, applicability of site online, and the accessibility, and to develop narrations about the specimen in the museum. This is a concrete possibility to bring together information and emotions, giving to the general public, but in particular to the student, a new access to a scientific vision of the world, also thanks to the multimedia. The first two thematic paths are environments and landscapes. They are very important for a geographical contextualization of the museum's specimens. Then we have the stories. Through the stories we can have stories of the most important professor of the university, and thanks to museum collection it is possible to have a precise idea of the tools used by the researchers in the past, so to better understand that science is also a matter of historical possibilities. And here we have an example of how it will look like the home page of Landscape Path. As it's possible to see in the image, we propose a very explorative interface with different channels of access to the contents of the portal. At the top of the page, we have a disciplinary categorization of the itinerary. Another way to refine the list of the itineraries works by clicking on the regional map we have on the left. Itineraries have also a chronological categorization, which we can exploit by using the timeline at the bottom of the page. When we click, when you click on the title of one itinerary, we go to another page, which is the specific itinerary itself. Thank you for your attention.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Elena. Oh, there you are.
Perhaps I lose my time. I don't check very well, but I think
it's just a minute over, so I was going to let you finish. I love the emphasis on scientific careers and how students can see themselves through the different thematic pieces, including the environment and stories, and using museum objects to help them realize these scientific careers. Did anyone have any questions from Twitter or in the audience for Elena? No?
Thank you.
You were so precise. We'll also come back to the end because I'd like to ask the group as a whole, and you can be thinking about this, what is the best way to personalize museum programs to specifically reach the audiences that we're thinking about today? So thinking about that personalization, excuse me, and the museum audiences that we're reaching. So we'll come back to you in just a little bit, Elena, but thank you so much. Next, I would like to introduce Richard Lachapelle, from Canada, and he's here in Washington, D.C. with us here at the CECA conference, and he's going to be talking about reconsidering the use of lecturing in museum education practice. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Ashley. Today I'm going to talk about the use of lecturing and guided tours in a museum. And to be clear, I'm not suggesting that museums return to lecturing as a mode of delivery for their guided tours with visitors. However, like many of you, I visit museums on a regular basis because of my professional interests. When I visit museums, I often pay attention to what visitors and educators are doing in the galleries. I'm surprised to notice that lecturing is still a common practice in many museums. I've seen instances of lecturing and guided tours even in museums that have made a commitment to using interactive approaches in their communications with visitors. I don't want to condemn these museums or their educators. I think it's more productive to try to understand why some museum educators rather are still lecturing their visitors rather than trying to engage them in conversation or dialogue. When I talk about conversation or dialogue, I'm referring to the work of Burnham and Kaiki 2011. So today we'll briefly address two types of situations where lecturing is taking place in guided tours. In the first instance, I'll talk about examples where lecturing is taking place and when it's clearly not desirable to do so. In the second instance, I'll present examples of situations where lecturing might be justified. But first, why is the use of lecturing problematic? Well, here are 3 reasons, and we could probably find a lot more. Lecturing places the visitor in a passive position where his or her role is simply to listen. Lecturing reinforces the visitor's dependence on the museum as an authority on the work of art or the exhibit. Lecturing can deprive the visitor of the pleasure that comes from actively discovering for oneself and along with others a meaning for the work of art or the exhibit on display. So then, why are we still encountering lecturing and gallery tours in the museum? In some instances, docents and other museum educators resort to lecturing probably because they feel insecure about their ability to engage a group in discussion. Leading a good discussion is a skill that requires both training and experience. Sometimes lecturing is wrongly perceived as less risky than using discussion or dialogue. So this was an example of where lecturing occurs and probably shouldn't. Furthermore, citing research by Emily Keenley-Side, 2015, docents who invest large amounts of time researching and learning about specific works of art naturally want to share their knowledge with the visitor. Some docents report having experienced a type of cognitive dissonance when leading groups in discussion. This conflict arises when discussions and dialogues don't provide enough opportunity to address all the knowledge that the docent possesses about the work of art. So these docents sometimes feel that their guided tours are coming up short of their full potential, and thus they feel conflicted about it. Yes, I'm already on page 4. Based on my own observations in museums, there are situations where lecturing seems to be a sensible approach. First, it can be very difficult to engage a group in discussion in a very busy, very noisy, blockbuster type of exhibition. It's hard to engage in dialogue if participants are having a difficult time hearing each other and when there are too many distractions. A second example comes from the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, where plans are underway to offer guided tours to visitors suffering from aphasia. How do you engage in conversation with visitors who can't talk? Obviously, a guide would need to rely on alternate ways of communicating with these visitors. However, in addition, I suspect a guide might need to resort to more lecturing in order to make these tours a success. Finally, based on my own experience as a museum guide some 25 years ago, there are sometimes groups that expect a guide to lecture them. This happened to me a few times when I was meeting with groups of seniors who in their youth had attended private schools that dispense a traditional classical education. These Catholic classical colleges, as they were called, were common in Quebec, Canada, up until the 1950s. These visitors preferred to listen, and they actively resisted and complained about my attempts to engage them in discussion about the works of art. Why? Well, as young people, they were taught that teachers were all-knowing and that learning required careful listening in silence. So these were the examples I wanted to present to you today. Now it's your turn. Please share your thoughts about this topic.
Wonderful. Thanks, Richard. At first when I saw the title of the session, I almost cringed. I thought exactly what you were saying, this idea of lecturing in museum education practice. I thought, oh no, what is he going to talk about? But I like the idea that you're toying with this sage on the stage model versus guide on the side model, and I think some people have come to expect it over time as they're visiting museums. So I really appreciate the idea about reconsidering it. So, Does anyone in the audience have any questions for Richard? No? Anybody on Twitter? No, not yet. Okay, great. Well, it does look like we have a few visitors here, viewers, excuse me. I wondered, too, if you could talk a little bit about how you might personalize museum programs with lecturing to reach specific audiences.
I think I would reserve lecturing for instances where it's clearly needed. And I would avoid falling back on lecturing as a first choice or in the first instance. I think lecturing can sometimes supplement a discussion. So you might have a discussion with a group that is a little shy and hesitant to participate and might participate at times. But then there might be moments of silence where maybe the guide or the docent might need to say a little something to get the conversation going again. Because I started my career rather long time ago as a museum educator, I've had both experiences. I started out initially where lecturing was quite common, and we could see that that was an approach that had some strengths, but certainly weaknesses. The strength was you get across a lot of content. The weakness was that people weren't that interested. And you'd start a guided tour with maybe 40 people, and within 10 minutes you were down to 20. And then, within 30 minutes you were left with 10. So that was a clear sign that people weren't being engaged by the lecturing method. Whereas with discussions, which I practiced a bit later, I did manage to engage a group and maintain a group, and in fact, it was the opposite. People would join the group as you were going through the galleries, and they were listening in on what you were talking about with the participants, and so it was the opposite effect.
Yeah. One thing I've heard here as I've been listening to a number of the different conference sessions is the fact that we're starting to move from the idea that museums are all-knowing and are the ultimate experts, and start to acknowledge our audience's expertise in a way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also what you're really getting at, to pass this lecturing, also acknowledging their own personal connections to the content and engaging them in a discussion that's a little bit more fruitful.
Absolutely. I think in a democracy, museums have to welcome all audiences. And it's obvious that the kinds of conversations we're going to have with museum visitors is going to differ from group to group, from person to person, and all those conversations are valid and should be encouraged. What's important is to have a conversation with the collection and the works of art.
Perfect, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Richard.
You're welcome, my pleasure.
We're going to now move to Matheus in Brazil, and then we'll bring everybody back for final questions at the end. So I'd like to introduce Matheus Rocha Moreira from Brazil. He'll be talking about museum strategies to bring intangible heritage to the visually impaired. And Matheus will also be assisted by a translator as well. Matheus?
Olá, eu sou o Matheus Rocha, essa é minha amiga Gabriela, que vai me ajudar então nesse processo. Esse trabalho vai falar sobre medidas que vão tornar o patrimônio imaterial acessível aos visitantes deficientes visuais.
So this is Matheus, I'm Gabriela, and I'll be translating for him. And he's going to talk about how to make intangible heritage closer to public with visual impaired people. And we'll be considering intangible heritage as social practices and skills that are carried out as knowledge, production, celebration, performances, and all artistic expressions, and in fairs and festivals, and all those things that are present in a society.
O patrimônio material, então, ele tem essas manifestações sociais coletivas, que são as formas de vivência do povo junto a essas atividades. Então, a gente vai entender um pouco desses recursos sensoriais presentes no patrimônio imaterial.
So we'll see some of the possible ways to share these experiences, these social experiences, and one of them would be to perceive them through the sensorial resources that we can find in the intangible heritage.
Os museus, eles salvaguardam os acervos tangíveis, que eles são perceptíveis para todos os públicos, aliás, para o público vidente. Então, facilita inclusive as reproduções. Porém, a forma que vai expor o grande material, o grande acervo, aliás, o grande impedimento para as pessoas deficientes visuais, vai facilitar agora com a comunicação mais eficiente através da expografia, arquitetura e a mediação atitudinal.
So museums are responsible for tangible collections. This is common and it's even popular among the general public. However, exposing the intangible heritage is more complex. The way they are exposed can be a huge obstacle for people with disabilities. The communication is not always effective, whether it is through exhibits or the place's architecture.
Então, o acervo tangível é mais facilmente trabalhado dentro do museu por apresentar diretamente ao público vidente esses recursos de materiais, né, de fácil reprodução para os cegos.
So tangible collections are easy to work with at museums because even though they speak directly to the sighted public, those collections are material. Therefore, it's easier to reproduce them to the visually impaired.
Já os acervos imateriais, que eles têm essa grande dificuldade de serem expostos. Então, dentro dos museus existe o setor educativo, que vai contribuir muito para essa interação. Ele vai mediar a exposição através dessas manifestações, aliás, através da mediação atitudinal.
But the intangible collections, they're very difficult to expose. They're very little effective for people with disabilities. Museums have, that's why museums have an education sector that promotes interaction and that in a certain way exposes all those cultural manifestations. The educator would then be a bridge using the attitude mediation to bring the public closer to the exhibits and to the immaterial heritage also.
Então, uma das coisas que a gente pode usar, que a gente usa para trazer essa acessibilidade, é a contação de histórias, as visitas teatralizadas, oficinas sensoriais, que são esses recursos de comunicação para todos os públicos, e é claro, para a pessoa com deficiência visual.
So at the museum where Matheus works, and I used to work there too, we have storytellings and what we call performatic or theatrical visits, and sensorial activities, and all of those can be excellent means of communication with all kinds of visitors, and especially, of course, the people with the visually impaired people.
Então, essas visitas na galeria, no espaço expositivo, ou sobre as questões patrimoniais do próprio espaço arquitetônico, a instituição pode contar com os recursos sensoriais, que são essas reproduções da fachada, criando os mapas táteis, e também coleta de sons, de histórias da cidade, local expositivo, que entra inclusive o imaterial, e essas performances podem representar excelentes recursos pedagógicos para a mediação das manifestações imateriais.
So whether people are visiting the exhibits, the galleries, or for aspects regarding the museum's architecture and its structure, the institution can use sensorial resources. So we have many times made replicas of the facade and tactile maps and graphics. We can collect sounds from all around the town and stories about the town and about the place, the institution, and all that can be an excellent pedagogical strategy to mediate the intangible heritage.
Comenta só que tem pouco a ver com o trabalho do palestrante anterior.
Yeah, and all that has a lot to do with all the last speaker, who was that, Richard, was talking about. We all that about how many visits are based on lectures, and it's a guided visit. That's a lot of what we try to work with, and how can we create interactions between the public and the exhibits and the place through dialogues and not through lectures only.
E por fim, o objetivo desses recursos é promover a vivência sensorial para todos os públicos, vai facilitar todos os públicos. Por fim, vai facilitar a comunicação, ou melhor, a mediação que existe entre a ação, o patrimônio material e o visitante.
So finally, the goal of these resources is to create sensorial perceptions and experiences for all audiences, and to facilitate communication, or rather mediation, between the activities and the visitors we receive. And that's all, I think.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Quick question for you. So it sounds like you're doing quite a large project as far as being able to bring intangible heritage to visually impaired visitors. What advice would you have for another museum who's trying to undertake a similar project?
Vocês estão fazendo grande trabalho de incluir os deficientes visuais no patrimônio material, no contato com o patrimônio material. Então, que conselho você teria para outros museus que também têm interesse em começar essa atividade?
Uma das ideias é saber, vivenciar, estar ao lado da pessoa, escutá-la, né, saber as necessidades dela e aproximar o máximo possível esse acervo, sabendo que tem as questões de preservação, mas facilitar esse acesso às obras, então entender o acervo.
Falar um pouquinho sobre o de acessibilidade. Well, he says that one thing that is important is to be close to that person and try and hear her or him and put yourself in their place and try to facilitate as much as you can their contact with whatever it is you are talking about, even though we know that we have all those aspects of preservation and things like that, of course. But at the museum where he works, we have, we call it research group, and there is one that is specific for creating activities for people with disabilities, all of them, especially the visually impaired. So we have 3-4 people that work especially with that, and they have been doing that work for a while. And that's what he's saying, trying to put yourself next to that person and listen to the person and see what it is they're interested in and try to get them closer to the immaterial heritage.
That's wonderful. That's actually something that we've been hearing throughout the entire conference, is to personalize disabilities, to not think of them as this group of people that I've never met before, but to really engage with the communities, to ask them for their own support to help us with these types of programs, and really start to think of them as part of our own museum community.
Sure, that's what we're trying.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Matheus and Gabriela, is that right? Yeah, thank you so much. So now I want to open the floor if any of our presenters have any other items for reflection or closing remarks that they'd like to share. Mario or Richard? Okay. Okay, so I think we have Mario joining us up here.
Hello, everybody, again. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate everybody for the wonderful sharing of experience. And this is the true spirit of CECA, is to share and to allow everybody to learn with everybody. This is the proof there are around the world. We can do a lot of projects and try to engage publics through museum education. And I think all of these projects and all of these reflections that came here today to this floor, or not this physical space, but this session, are truly important because they give us the hope in the future that the museum's education is the core of the museums. Okay, we need the artifacts, of course, we need the collections, but we need the mediation, because mediation is a process in both sides. It's a process of learning and teaching, and the museum's mediators learn every day with the visitors, of course, and the visitors learn every day with us. So this is an ongoing project, ongoing process, better speaking, and it's our job, and I'm very happy to have the opportunity to share with everybody and learn with you, and hope that next year these kind of sessions will be more with more persons around the world sharing their own experience. It's good for CECA and it's good for all museum mediators. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Elena, did you have any final comments?
I agree with my colleagues. I think that it is a real fantastic way to share the experience, also for the people that perhaps cannot come to the place of the conference. The next year will be in Milan, so I hope that I can meet you, all of you in Milan, in any case. But I think that in any case, and I hope that also in Milan, that it will be possible to share our experience through this hangout. That is fantastic, a fantastic opportunity. Thanks a lot for this opportunity.
Absolutely. And Matheus?
Então, eu quero agradecer a participação, e a gente percebe, né, que é muito interessante essa ideia de conversar sobre esse mesmo tema em todos os lugares, né? Aqui no Brasil a gente está conversando muito sobre mediação, e agora a gente percebe aí em vários lugares, é muito bom.
Well, he says, thank you for the opportunity, and we were just talking about how it's a very new concept and we don't see it everywhere, and we're starting to work with it here in Brazil and talk more about it. So it's nice to see people from the other side of the world that are thinking the same things and researching and just having the same idea. It's nice to have someone to talk about it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Matheus and Gabriela, Elena, Mario, Richard. We're about to finish up. Real quick, I also wanted to mention this session will be archived. So if you have friends that you'd like to share this with, it will be archived on the CECA website, the CECA DC 2015.wordpress.com website, as well as the CECA YouTube page and the Gmail account. We'll be sure to also tweet out the link through Twitter as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to enjoying the rest of the conference and learning so much more about accessibility. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.